Henning.
Here.
Gorman.
Here.
Merkel.
Here.
Kelly. Here. Bachman.
Here.
And Stevens.
Here. So are we going right to Mr. Schweitzer?
Evening. It's that fun time of year. So just starting with looking at where we are right now. Of course, we know the levy passed in all three wards, so that was good to see the city turn out for us. One thing with that is we won't receive that till, that doesn't go into effect till 1/1 of '26. So people, companies will not be doing withholding remittances until the first quarter is over. So we're looking at April 15th, those will be due of '26. We probably won't see that money till June, once it gets processed by CCA and gets sent to us. Same with estimated payments for residents. They'll be filing those with their annual returns. Those are due in April as well. So we're looking, we got a year and a half to get through till we start seeing the increase in the levy. We've got a conservative budget presented again. Me and the city manager sat down with the department heads, and we actually went line by line, discussing each item, how much we needed, was what, why was it that amount, what could we reduce it, did it need to be increased. So we did that with each department head, and which we do every year, but we did make cuts because we're still trying to get, we don't know what's going to happen next year. Don't want to just say we got this levy money's coming, let's spend it before we get it. And so, and then also with last council meeting, you guys decided to do the leaf pickup. So that was not budgeted, and went back, looked for funds that we could use. We did have some small amount left in our American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA monies, the COVID monies, and went back and looked at the POs that we still had open, trimmed down to the cost that I think we needed for some of the programs, projects that we still had open. And so since it's just a one pass through for the leaf pickup, we got $10,000 I found that we can use through the ARPA monies to pay for this leaf pickup. So hopefully it'll come in underneath that. I know the diesel fuel is the biggest cost with those things running constantly. So. So going through our revenue expenses from looking at our actuals from 22 and 23 to what's budgeted for this year, and then what we're proposing for next year. Looking at the general fund expenses, back in 2022, we were at about 1.2 million on personnel, and we're at 1.1 projected for next year. We don't have, in the admin department, we still don't have the economic development director budgeted for next year. We still have one full-time position at the golf course we did not fill. Then if you look at the total expenses, which these do include some transfers, you can see from 2022 we're at 6.2, and going down from what's budgeted this year, and then what's proposed in 2025 is 5.5. So we have, have cut back over the years on the operating sides at least. And you can see that on the next slide. Looking at 2022, we're 5 million in operating expenses. What we're proposing next year is 4.4. And what's included in these operating expenses are our contractual agreements for IT services, any software, stuff like that, utilities, newsletter production, mailing, property insurance, office supplies, equipment maintenance, vehicle maintenance is all included in operating expenses. Looking at the police department, looking at personnel services, you'll see it's kind of a steady increase there from 2.1 in 2022 to 2.6. We have the agreements there, the bargaining agreements we have to comply with, and there's steps that are involved in that as well as the increases. What we do have so far this year, for next year, is we did budget for 3%. All the labor agreements we have or have wage reopeners for 2025, and I know they've started working on those, but nothing's been done yet as far as agreement on what the percentage will be, if any. And then looking at the total expenses for the police, it's went from 2.5 to 3 million over those 4 years. So operating expenses, we've kind of kept tight, but there's not much play in the operating expenses in the police. There's not much beside, once you get past dispatch services and some of the body cameras services, there's not much left but vehicle expense, and so we try to keep it at a minimum we can. And then you can see on the next slide with the police fund, the operating expenses. For this year, we had a $40,000 increase. It looks bigger than, because it goes way out there, but we will not be utilizing everything that we had budgeted with that, like we did that every year. We don't spend everything we budget, so that's why you'll see when we come back next year, the budget actual is going to be have some variances there. The fire department kind of mirrors the police department. We have a little steady increase in personnel service costs. So we went from 2.1 in 2022 to about 2.5 proposed for next year. And then on the total budget, we've increased about 300,000 from 2022's actual to what's proposed for 2025. And you can see on the next slide the operating expenses. So you can see they have around 350 to 360. And you can compare that to the personnel is at, over 2 million. So that, again, we are a service organization. That's where all our cost is the people. Personnel services is where you're going to have the majority of the expenses coming out of. Then looking at the service department, again, we've had this was the first year we had the service department be unionized. So when we did the budget for 2024, we did not have anything budgeted in there for the new union. But looking at the 2022 actual, we were at 981,000 for their costs, and next year is proposed at 1.2. So there is some increase, not huge though. And then if you look at the operating expenses, you can see in 2022 we had 876,000, and it's been going down each year. I know in 2022 we had an adjustment in there for some of our investments from the market to the cost we did in 2022. 2023 we had significant expenses in there for some of the park improvements we did. Came out of the service fund as well as the CIP fund.
Randy, you're not getting your fair share. I would agree with that 100%.
Then lastly, looking at the golf course, their personnel services have been basically flat, 600,000 to 619,000. That's what's proposed next year. And then the total budget is remained pretty flat over all those years. So if we look deeper at the operating expenses for the golf fund, in 2023, we saw a decrease. That year we were without our cart lease. We were waiting for the new carts to come in, and so we had some. It ended, and we waited for the new ones to come in. So we paid a one-time fee to get us through. So we had some savings there from the lease. So you can see next year we're anticipating $491,000 in operating expenses at the golf course. So with all those departments, we still need to make transfers from the general fund. So as you can see, we have the 2022 actual, 2023 actual, 2024. You're starting to see almost every department increase. 2025 is the same, is another increase, except for service. We're anticipating some of the rollover balance we have. We don't have to transfer as much to them next year. But we're looking at, for the police department, we're looking at $1,490,000 in transfers. For the fire and EMS department, looking at $980,000. The service, we were looking at $150,000. And then debt service is at $678,410. And that is an increase from this year. When we got our assessments in for the curb work that we had placed on people's taxes. It seems like some of them were not paying their taxes, so we didn't get the collections that we should be getting. So anticipating we're going to have to cover some next year, hopefully. If we do get the collections come back where we think they should be, then we won't have to transfer out that much money. We'll just keep it in the general fund.
So, since we're going to be doing so many transfers next year, would we be able to transfer some of that back into the general fund once the levy goes in place in 2026?
Once you transfer out of the general fund, you cannot transfer back. So
Okay,
that's
so-
why. So when I do multiple transfers a year. So you authorize me. So for like the police department, 1.49, I will transfer as it's needed throughout the year. So when I get to the end of the year, I look at what we're budgeting for an ending balance, and I only transfer enough to get there. So I usually don't use all the transfers because, again, we don't spend all the budget we approve. So I minimize the transfers that we have to make. The auditors one year said, well, they gave me a comment on our audit because I didn't transfer all the money. I'm like, I don't want to transfer all the money. So that
26, so police and fire will be covered by the.
they'll have the 0.5%. We should not have to. It should be bringing in plenty. So when I do the transfers now, I put in there up to because, yeah, I want to keep as much as we can in the general fund and keep the transfers out as minimal, so.
And the debt service will continue in past 2025 about at a consistent level?
We had 2016 is when we issued the bonds and we started doing all the curb and gutter work. So 16, 17, 18, 19 was when we did the big amounts, and we certified those. So it was 5 years for some and 10 years for other. So like 2026 and afterwards, we'll start seeing that fall off a little bit. And then in 2030, all of our, it seems like, I don't know what we did, but all our debt is maturing then. So we should have a nice break from making debt payments in 2030. I know that's down the road, but again, if we do get the assessments come into the debt service fund for those curb and gutter works, I won't transfer out that money from the general fund to debt service, just what's needed to make up.
Okay, cool, thank you.
So let me ask you just a what-if question. So once the debt service is paid down, let's just say we have a zero, is that something that we would like issue new debt to continue? Or, I mean, I guess it's impossible to answer, I guess, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be dependent on if there were large
Yeah.
projects that the city needed to do, and that if council was agreeable to doing that. But I mean, right now,
Yeah, the debt we have now is we had it for the Main Street improvements, Phase 1. We had some work at the Commerce Park, which is now Caterpillar. And then we had some bonds issued for the Hoke and Kimmel Road repair improvements for Caterpillar. And then the last ones we did were 2016 for the curb and gutter work. So
I'm thinking
those-
more like for the curb and gutter. I mean, is that something that we're gonna have to like keep maintaining, obviously, you know?
yeah, we will need to keep maintaining it, but we don't issue debt for curb and gutter work now. So I don't anticipate.
I know in 16 we also had the road improvements, so we tried to catch up with the roads that we kind of neglected
I
maintaining.
think at the time it was so much curb
Yeah.
that was either non-existent or crumbling that had
Right,
to be
and in
all.
2016, I think that was very common for cities to issue bonds for that work.
What about, we have both chiefs here. Chief Garver, would you see potential debt for a new fire station for the collaborative? Yeah. What year would you say for that?
He would say next year.
I just think, saying
No, that's-
zero
that-
debt service is unrealistic when we know that this.
It's still on the table, but honestly, we gotta wait and see where the income tax comes in, so we don't know until 2026. And what does that look like? What excess funds do we have, if any, after that? Where is our CIP funding at? When our debt falls off? So I would say, once 26 hits and we get through most of that year, we can have a conversation. But I think that's when we start having that conversation. So you wouldn't see anything until 27 or 28 at least. And then we start having those conversations. So, yeah, it's still on the table. I mean, people have asked us about it. The need for the firehouse has not gone away. It's just been postponed because we had a plan pre-COVID. And COVID wrecked all of that. But all those same issues are there and even multiplied by that since we haven't addressed them for 5 years now. So it's just something that we're going to have to address. And it's going to be a money thing, and we just have to wait and see how that plays out. So there will be debt service eventually for a firehouse. There's no way around that. We can't cash flow it. So.
And also one thing with debt service, we were able to, back in 2013, we did what we call advance refunding. We had some bonds that are outstanding at a higher interest rate. We know we could refinance them at a lower rate, so we did that. It's called advance refunding. Since then, the federal government's taken that away for governments to do advance refundings. So, it's just like refinancing your house at a lower rate, but we can't do that now, so.
Yeah, I don't know, Amanda, looking at the Dayton Developments Coalition, PDAC projects, they have a lot of community auditorium, grants for park improvements. I think a grant for a park improvement is fantastic, but I personally would say money for a fire station would be more important. So it might be worth working with Dayton Development Coalition to see if they've ever done a PDAC project for a public safety / firehouse.
I know they've done them. I know the Bolt received money through the PDAC process, and then the city potentially has received money for a water line project through the PDAC process. So it's absolutely something we can look at.
Cool.
So looking at the revenue side, general fund's been pretty steady. The CIP, if you look at 2022, I know we had a higher amount than what we've had in the other years, but we did receive some grants, and we also utilized permissive tax to do some of the road projects we were doing. In the police, you'll see the revenue going up. In the fire, that's the transfers have been increasing each year, so that's the revenue going up for them. And the same with the services. Services, it depends on if we got special projects we're doing in the parks or something like that where they need more money for transfers. And then the golf has been pretty steady with the revenue for the banquet and the golf course.
Kevin, quick question. I know you're probably not doing this. I also make sure for the general fund and then transfers out, you're not counting that money twice. How does that work?
It will count as a transfer out, so it's an expense in the general fund, but it counts as revenue in the funds that we transferred it to. So yeah, it's kind of double counting. It's the way the governmental counting is. It's confusing, but yeah, when you're looking at revenue, those transfers in are counting for the police, fire, service funds. But on the expense side, you'll see it in the general fund.
But it's a wash.
Yeah, they better agree, yeah, because something's wrong if they don't, so. But it is confusing that, yeah, you're showing it, you're kind of inflating your expenses and revenues for these transfers. Looking at the general fund, when I looked at, the revenue in the blue versus the expenditures in the orange, you can see that usually our revenues are not keeping up with our expenditures. And again, that's got your transfers in there. 2023 was the first year we came on with the building departments. That kind of changed a little bit. And then we have seen a decrease in cable franchise fees. I guess more people are going to streaming and stuff like that. So we used to get quite a bit, decent amount from cable franchise fees, and it has been dwindling over the years. And then so in 2025, we're looking at 5.1 million in revenues versus the 5.6 in expenditures. So again, $500,000 that we're spending at fund balance. Capital projects, capital improvement projects fund. Again, 2022, we had some grants and permissive tax that we received, and you'll see that we had about 3.1 in revenue, only 1.9 in expenses. But then some of those were still, the POs were still open, we were still working on in 2023. That's why you'll see a higher expenditure amount than revenue in the CIP in 2023. It's kind of continuation of some of the projects we were doing. And then it kind of dropped down to about normal in what we have for this year, 1.8 million in revenue, 1.2 in expenses. Same amount next year for revenue, and about 2.6 million in expenditures. We do have some, fund balance that we can utilize for those, so there's no transfers going to the capital improvement project fund from the general fund.
Okay, question. That increase for 25, is there any significant projects you could note that are going to drive that cost up?
I've got a list going back. I had a list of all the projects we're doing, so get to that. Yep. The police, we've been pretty close with, like I said, I only transfer over what they need. So their revenues and expenditures are pretty close each year, but they have been increasing each year with that personnel cost. So, like I said, I keep those to a minimal and keep the monies in the general fund so we can use them for other items if we need. And then looking at the fire department and EMS funds, it's, pretty consistent like the police. We meet the expenses with the transfers and the revenue. They do have property tax for the fire as well as EMS, and they have the EMS billing that helps them out, but still needs transfers from the general fund to help meet those. The service department, they've, again, they use, depending on what their projects are, what their expenses are going, they're pretty consistent, about around 1.7 in expenses and 1.5, 1.7 in revenues. So again, next year, we're looking at a lower revenue, but that's because we're not having as much transfers because we have this carryover balance that we're going to utilize from, we've been working on the Hoke Road widening and putting monies back and stuff, and we've utilized some of the ARPA monies as well in CIP and stuff, so the service department doesn't have to bear the brunt for that, and that's where we're seeing the savings for the transfers there. And looking at Meadowbrook, again, you see that revenues are not keeping up with expenses. 2022, our revenues were 800,000, expenses were 1.1 million. This year was up, we had 810 and 1.1. I know we did have more play this year, a lot of drier summer, so our green fees and cart fees have went up, so we've seen an increase there. And we're looking at having some more revenue come in next with the rentals, and we've seen a lot more rentals, and taking over the liquor license has helped us too, keeping that money instead of having the caterer before taking it. So you will see that we got about 926,000 in revenue budget versus 1.1 in expenses. And again, the golf course is within the general fund, so transfers don't have to be made. It just gets absorbed in there, so it does eat away at the general fund balance if we do have a loss.
So it looks like next year we're going to have to subsidize Meadowbrook 200,000.
Budgeted, yeah.
Budgeted.
I mean, that's what we did this year. I mean, last month, we were still in the black when we'll get to here in a couple of weeks, we'll look at through November and see where we're at. I know play's kind of sliding off, but then again, last year was too, but they also, you don't have as much staff there now. The crews out on the course, they're done. They've turned the irrigation system off. So it's just down here, will be down to the 2 full-time course people, and then Bill will be in there most of the time once we switch over to simulator play, he handles most of that, but we do have a couple part-time people there. So fingers crossed, we can make it work.
So on here, I mean, for 2024, I mean, that's just going off of the budget here, because,
Yeah.
I'm seeing, the gap, but then
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm not an accountant.
Yeah, that's
know,
one thing that, when we're looking at this is 2022 and 2023's actual numbers, and then 24 and 25 are budgeted, so those are,
So you don't think the $300,000 difference for 2024 is going to be 300? You think
No.
it'll come in at under
Yes,
300?
yeah, I'm thinking it'll probably be under 100.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully, it'd be nice to have it show a profit. You know, it might be wishful thinking, but it's not going to be as what we had last year, so.
Kevin, quick question. This is probably more broad, general question. You've got what you budgeted for '24. How close would you say we will end up on budgeted versus actual? Is it pretty close, or you got that one range with Meadowbrook that sounds sort of big?
Yeah, I think I got a slide coming up. I'd show you where.
I don't mean to steal your show. I'm
No,
just-
we're already state, here's what we estimated the beginning general fund balance to be, and here's what the actual general fund beginning balance was. So we get to that, we can go back to your question. Okay. And right here it is, I guess, yeah. Next slide. This is the estimated beginning balance versus the actual. In 2021, we estimated we were going to be at 3.5. We ended at 5.4. In 2022, we estimated 3.4 million balance, and we were at 5.3. Then 23, we began at 3.8, and we had estimated 3.3. So the variances are getting smaller now. We had big differences in the earlier years. And then 2024, we started out at 3.6 million, and we had estimated 2.3. So that's going along with being conservative on the revenue side, collecting more than what we budgeted, and then not spending everything we budgeted. So kind of controlling those expenses where we can. And like, overtime is kind of a guess. It depends on, vacations or with Randy, that they're, how the snow is and if they're out, overtime and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things come into play, but like I said, we do both revenue and expenses conservatively so we can come in better than what we're projecting.
I mean, I think this is great for us to share. If we could share this slide page on
Okay.
social media, I personally think it shows how fiscally responsible you, Amanda, all the department heads are for anybody that may be inquiring.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at the revenues, right now in the 2025 budget, it's currently at 13 million. So it is about 489,000 more than last year. This number does not include the transfers. Those are at 3.2 million, and it's 102,000 less than last year. So we do have less transfers, mainly from the service department. We did see an increase this year in income tax, so that's going to help us when we get to the ending fund balance. We've been about 5%, which we've been doing better than a lot of cities around us. I think looking at some of the withholding remittances and the companies, it has to do with construction that's going on around here. So I've seen electrical companies, plumbing companies, that, and I think Caterpillar has had an increase as well. From what I'm seeing, so we did include a 5% increase over this year.
But doesn't that also increase with the housing increases?
Yeah, if you get the new houses built and families come in, and again, depending on where they work versus living here, you could see an increase in income tax collection for sure. We also had increases in the general fund and property tax. The general fund was the only fund, property tax levy we had that wasn't capped. So with the increases in the values, we saw it's a small increase, but it did increase for the general fund, I think about 150,000. And I said income tax, building department charges with all the permits that we were doing for the developments that are happening. And then it said like green fees and the cart rentals have went up as well. So looking at the general fund, and this does includes golf, you'll see that the biggest source of income for us is the income tax, followed by the charges for services, which includes the golf course charges for services, and then third it would be the property tax that we get. For the police, you're looking at 50% of it's coming from transfers. And that was why we needed the income tax levy. They do get 39% from property taxes. Intergovernmental is about 10%. And you'll see 1% for fine and forfeitures. And I talked with Chief Hamlin about this. I asked him, I said, because I seen comments online about how much they get for a speeding ticket. And so he said for every ticket, they get about $20, and it's usually $160 with court costs, fines, and stuff like that. So they get about, 12% of that ticket. So we're only getting $20. The court's getting the biggest chunk of that. So
The court's getting the biggest chunk, and then they don't help us when we submit homes that aren't
Yep.
playing nice.
So, and so that revenue we get from the fines is about 0.5% of the budget for revenue. So it is a small amount. So, I mean, if we were making money on speeding tickets, I guess we'd tell them to go issue more, but we're not, so. Looking at the fire department for revenue, again, they're at 50% now with transfers. The charges for services, the EMS billing they're doing is next at 26%. And then property taxes and then intergovernmental monies we receive are the next biggest contributors. Now, if we switch to the service department, you'll see 85% of theirs is intergovernmental. So it's a lot of the gas tax, motor vehicle tax that we receive from the state that goes into the service department when we have the state highway fund, which for that fund, we can only use it to expend monies that are related to 40, 48, 49, but we can use that to help repair some of the dump trucks because they do plow and do work on those state highways. So intergovernmental is the biggest thing for them, and then transfers in at 13%, so the rest are kind of small. So then if we switch over to the expenses, the personnel, like I said, we did include a 3% cost of living adjustment. That's what the State Employment Relations Board is saying that the average is. Again, we do have the union negotiations to go through, so that could change. I don't know. We do include the incentives for the police, fire contracts, and now the service department. Like I said, we still have one police officer positions not filled, or we're missing the economic development director and the golf course position. The budget does include hiring a battalion chief that we've been doing without for most of this year. I know Chief Garvers, I think he's getting tired of doing the 24 shifts, and he's not young anymore, so. As far as community events and commitments, we did put those all back in there. Leaf pickup is in there. If we decide to go forward with fireworks or whatever you want to do, we have those in there. Since we, like I said, we did make cuts, so we can bring some of that stuff back, and we're still watching the balances, but transfers out decreased, like I said, 102,000. The total budget did increase a small amount, $9,500 from 2024. And that budget increase is just to for the general fund, police, fire, and service departments. So if you look at the biggest chunk of expenses for the general fund, it's transfers out. That's what we're using all our monies for, the general fund, basically. 21% is going to contractual services. So that's, like I said, that's our keeping the website and internet and all the things we need to do here. And then personnel services is 20%, and the rest are all kind of minor. On the police side, 85% is personal services, so the cost of the officers is at 85%. Contractual services, like I said, that's the dispatch services, the amount we pay to Vandalia courts, body cameras is included in there. That's at 12%. And then the final two are small material and supplies. The fire department as well, they're at 87% in personnel cost. Contractual services are a little lower at 9% for them. Repairs and maintenance, trying to keep all that equipment running and in good condition is takes a little bit of money. And then in the service department, their personnel costs are only 76%, but their material and supplies are 14%. Like I said, they have the salt, and then their asphalt, some catch basins, all this. Their supplies is what they're working with. That takes the next most amount of money for them. And then looking at Meadowbrook, they're at personnel costs is at 56%. And then contractual services at 17%. I know the big items there are utilities and property insurance. And then material and supplies, the chemicals that they use there to keep the greens so nice and not getting fungus and burning and all that stuff is a significant amount. And then we do have debt service for the golf cart lease. So then looking at the capital improvement projects funds, these are the items that we are proposing next year to do. Again, there's no transfers coming from general fund to pay for these. We have the monies within the fund, or we'll collect it next year to pay for these. So the fire department needs to acquire a new medic. It was supposed to be done this year or for a couple of years, and so we have that on. Hoke Road widening, we got $650,000. This should finish up hopefully what we are going to be our portion for that project. We do have a new leaf machine on there. That's $90,000. We have annual rollover of the park and cemetery mowers. Those things are used. We have 2 of them that are used every day, so they do get quite a bit wear and tear. $830,000 for street and curb maintenance. So we can get back on there and maintaining the roads and the curbs. The street department generator, $34,000. Right now, if we lose power, we don't have any power to the gas pumps over there, the diesel fuel or gasoline. We do have procedures in place where we have Shell cards that the supervisors have that they can go and fuel the vehicles if something happens and we don't have power. They can go to the Shell station and get fuel that way. But it would be nice to be able to have power if something's happening. We need to work on machines. We need light in the garage, and then we'll have those pumps working. So that was budgeted for next year. Down at Meadowbrook, replacing all the blinds. Most of them are broken or can't open or close. That's $25,000. And then we have our lease payments for dump trucks, some golf course equipment, and we got some new Enterprise, the leases we did with Enterprise for a fire department in a police cruiser. We should have one. We got notice it's been made and it's somewhere, so we're hopefully getting it here soon, and we have another one budgeted for next year. And then we have bond payments that we make out of the CIP fund as well. So looking at the personnel costs, comparing it from 2024 budget to 2025, actually you'll see a decrease in the admin side, but that's kind of more attributable to the economic development director position. You'll see a decrease in Meadowbrook for $6,000. Like again, the police, fire, and service departments have wage reopeners, so with the steps they have and the other requirements of that, we're seeing a $209,000 increase in police, $137,000 in the fire, and a $55,000 in the service department. So overall, a $264,000 increase in personnel cost. Then looking at the operating side, on the admin, we're looking at a small increase of $902,000 on admin, $4,000 for Meadowbrook. Police, we have cut that down $31,000. Fire, $14,000. And the service department, $111,000. Just looking at hopefully with the fuel cost, salt usage, we have a full barn full of salt because we had a mild winter, so we're seeing some savings there. So that's why I said we went through line by line, seeing what we needed. So we're showing a total decrease there of $152,000 in operating expenses. So just to kind of project out the general fund, looking at this year, at budget revenue, budget expenses, and where we started the year at, we're looking at the end on the budget side at 2.3. And then next year, for what we proposed in the budget for as far as revenue expenses, we're looking at ending next year at 1.7 million. And then in 2026, you're seeing that increase come in from the income taxes. So we're looking at hopefully having the general fund balance come up to 4.2 million. And then 2027 and 28, 29, we're starting to we'll have a big bump at first. I see a leveling off. There'll be some increases, hopefully, for income taxes. But we'll still be monitoring the expenses, minimizing the transfers. But you can see, through 2029, we're at 5.4 million estimated at general fund ending balance. So, like I said, this levy, it was needed. It will help us, sustain us, so that we're not going to have to go back in 5 years and ask for more money. We still keep conservative and do what we've been doing. We should be good. And like I said, the next year, 2030, that's when we have the debt payments going off. So we'll have transfers that we won't have to make to the debt service fund and keep that in the general fund as well.
Kevin,
So,
and then, there is development going on, currently and other proposed ones. So is these projected
I did not include
numbers?
any assumption that we're going to have more development. I just kept it, what facts I have now, what the trend analysis was, and what we're seeing through this
Okay.
year, so.
That's nice to know, actually, because, knowing that good chances could actually increase.
Yeah, and when we do revenues or expenses, I don't budget that we're going to have grants coming in, because those are not a given, so.
just a broad question. So in the $5 to $6 million range, are you comfortable with that for a city our size?
You can see it's, we're increasing up through 28 and kind of 2029, hopefully, you're seeing expenses keep going up and up, so hopefully, we'll have where we can keep those kind of leveling off as well. $5 million, I'd like to have more, but going out that far, and like I said, with the bonds coming off and stuff, I think it's pretty good. Again, if we do have some other stuff come in or other developments, or it'd be nice to get, manufacturer or something, would increase our revenue. But again, it's, we just can't think we got this revenue coming in now, we can spend it. We still have to be careful what we do and be, plan it out and have, a map for what projects we're doing and where we're getting the monies from.
We go on, this is based on these next 5 years moving forward. The numbers you show by the trending in terms of standing balance into the fiscal year 2029.
Right.
It's increased into 2028. Now you see decrease in 29. This kind of mirrors essentially what we're at like right now. Previous years, standing balance in the general fund in the end of the year was gradually decreasing to the point where action was going to need to be taken to change the trend, which we've had to do.
Yeah, hopefully, the last couple of years, we've seen costs increase, on material supplies and energy and stuff. So hopefully, we will see a leveling off of that. Again, I'm using 15% increase each year based off of what we'd seen in the past, which, we'd have COVID in there and kind of screw stuff up and what we're seeing now. So hopefully that won't be the 15% increase, but I just use that to project out. So, and then also, like I showed you before, that 1231 beginning balance, that's a budget number. So, these are budgeted amounts. So hopefully, like we're showing, we're going to end better. So we're going to be higher than this. So I think we'll be in good standing for a while.
Yeah, I'm just looking from the standpoint that whoever sits in these seats in the future, not to just sit back and not do anything.
Right,
That
no.
be aware of the potentials that the economic development, city manager, persons responsible have to be active essentially at addressing the issues so that a more sustainable base for the city's income basically is on a trend where we have resources expanding, drawing more diversified to come in, versus relying on the same people paying more money for what we have right now.
Right.
So we have to have something happening going forward and planning for something going forward.
And like,
to sustain it.
yeah, like I said, when we were having the town hall meetings, you know, we have a lot of, or a city of a lot of houses and not much retail, commercial industry. So it falls on our residents. And it'd be nice to have something come along and help take that burden off so that we don't have to, you know, like, put all that on them. So what that is, I don't know. That's city manager's job, so. So looking at our draft budget, I know I sent out last Friday, I think I sent out all the, you guys have got the details of all the line items and what we look at when we're doing the conversations with the department heads, the city manager, going back and forth, seeing what we need to do. So this is just basically a summary as far as the way we budget versus personnel and operating expenses. So just going through there, I mean, some funds like the Drug Law Enforcement Trust Fund, there's some that we have that we don't have any activity, we collect it, and then that when they need to utilize that for training or equipment, we'll come back and amend appropriations, but it's not in here. And like what I'm doing right now, we're at the end of the year, I'm still, you know, I'm moving within the operating category and the personnel category. I'm moving monies around within our budget to be able to pay bills and open purchase orders without coming back to you to ask for more money. So I utilize the budget that you approve and make it work. In rare occasions, we do have to come back. I know I will have some budget amendments to make. We had some, like I said, building fees have increased. So when the fees, we have to pay the company that does our inspections and stuff like that. So we got some costs there to cover, but we have revenue to cover those expenses. So we will have some amendments there. So, and then, finally, that we have those transfers of 3.3 million that will be part of the budget as well. Does anyone have any other questions?
Before you, I guess this would be for Amanda. So for the CIP budget expenses, I mean, the only one that I would be hesitant on doing is the blinds at Meadowbrook. Before you do that, would you have conversations with us? Or if we approve the budget as is, you would just go ahead and approve everything on this CIP?
So the larger amounts, I would have to come back to council. The budget, the blinds for Meadowbrook would be just a purchase order that we could write and pay for that. Everything else, except for the park cemetery mowers, looks like it's above my spending level.
That's all I had.
Kevin, I got a question. When I was reading through the details, what you sent out, there's a couple of TIFs cited. I know we have a Hunter's Path TIF, but there wasn't a line item for that. So is there any money going into that in the next year?
The county, I've been in discussion with them, making sure they're picking up the progress out there, because sometimes they'll wait till it's completely done. And again, since property taxes are collected a year in arrears, so the taxes that are due on this year will be collected next year. So we may see some next year, but I didn't budget. Like I said, I didn't want to budget because I wasn't sure. So they're not included in there. So, but then again, there's no expenses we were going to pay for hunters. And I know we got some developers agreements with those TIFs. And like I said, those won't be paid until we have money in there. And then we come back to have you approve it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Anything else?
Great
Matt?
job, Kevin.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Comments, not questions.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of work there. Thank you. Okay, hearing no questions or comments, is there a motion to adjourn the workshop?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly motioned and then seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.